Hi there. Welcome to the Hutchinson Art Center's online art camp. My name is Hannah Beam, and I'm your instructor. Today we're talking about why does art matter? There are so many reasons that art matters, and the reasons that art matters to one person might be different than the reason that art matters to another person, but in general, there's a lot of reasons that art matters to all of us as a community and just as people in general. Art helps us to communicate with each other. It's a different form of communication called visual communication. We communicate with pictures, but then also when we talk about our art, we're communicating. It helps us build empathy, which is kind of like thinking about things from another person's point of view and how that differs from your own. It helps us to work better with people as we try to explain things and as we learn things from other people and as we make art about our experiences. It can help us learn about the world around us, about making things, about ourselves. We can learn so many different things. Art can help us, you can use art to help yourself learn math because there's a lot of kinds of art that use a lot of math in them. You can learn about language. You can learn about so many different things with art. So that's another reason that art matters. Art also helps with creativity. And creativity is something that you can use in every aspect of your life. It also helps with problem solving, which goes along really well with creativity because a lot of problems need creative problem solving. They need creative solutions because the regular solutions might not work so well. So using creativity along with problem solving that you can learn from art makes a big difference. It can also help build confidence. When you make something and you have it physically in front of you and you're like, I made this, there's something that's inside of you that just feels really good about that. Have you noticed that? If you've made art before, have you noticed how when you make something, it feels really good? So there's lots of different reasons why art matters. So as we do this project, think about, why does art matter to you? What's important about it? What do you like about art? Why does it matter? And this is something that you could ask people around you too. Ask them, why does art matter to you? So, in honor of thinking about why art matters, we're gonna make some art. So, I have a really fun project today. It's kind of a combo of 2D art and 3D art. So it kind of appeals to all different sorts of skills. So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna make a 3D relief bird and then put it on a background that we've painted. So here's my example for you. I made a little duck because, in case you didn't know, I have 13 ducks and I love them. So I made a little duck. You see his little feet under the water, and I gave him a nice little background, a nice little home. So the first thing we're gonna do is use Model Magic to make a bird shape. And this is really fun because it can be any kind of bird. You can think about normal birds that you see out your window, like maybe cardinals or sparrows or a meadowlark. That's the Kansas state bird. There's also really big birds like emus and ostriches and flamingos. Or there's exotic birds like toucans and parrots, a macaw, penguins. So many different kinds of birds. Like, I can't even get close to naming all of them. Chickens, obviously ducks, geese. You might see geese if you go to the park. So think about what kind of bird you might want to make. Think about where that bird might live or what kind of background you might want to put it in. If it's a pigeon, you could put it in like a city scene, but I mean, I'd see a toucan in the city. That would be so fun. So think about what kind of bird you want to make. I'm gonna make a toucan this time. So, let's see. To start out, you can start with just a lump like this, and then think about the shape of your bird. Does it have a really, really long neck? Does it have a fat body or a small body? Are you gonna put wings on it? What about a tail? So I think toucans kind of have a tail. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of start getting this squished. So I like to think of this as my base body shape. And from there, I'll kind of start to push and pull it to make kind of a neck and head shape here. So toucans have really big beaks. So I'm definitely gonna need a lot of this for his head and his beak. So, and see, I'm just kind of pushing it and squeezing it to make these different shapes. So this is kind of like his beak shape here. Got a nice big beak with his head. And it can be kind of abstract if you want. But he's kind of push and shape. I don't know, I kind of feel like he needs a little bit more of a beak. There, that feels a little more toucan-y. Yeah, that feels about right. Using a reference photo for this can be really helpful. So if you look up a picture of your bird first and then look at it while you're trying to make your bird shape, that can be really helpful. I feel like he needs less of a neck. So I'm just going to squish him right back in. And I'm kind of trying to sort of smooth it as I go, but I'm not too worried about it. Okay, he needs a tail for sure. So there we go. And I kind of get it nice and flat there. Kind of squeeze his neck in so he has a little bit of a neck. There. And he's pretty fat, honestly. But that's okay. We'll let him. He ate lots of worms today. Or whatever toucans eat. I don't really know. Maybe berries. I feel like they eat berries. Fruit. Yeah. Fruit Loops. Yes. He ate too many Fruit Loops. And now he's got a big tummy. Okay. I think that's going to work for my toucan shape. So you can see this is a really simple shape. And you watched as I just kind of pushed and pulled it. So you can work on your bird shape. And then once you have it, kind of lay it, because it's going to lay flat, you want to make sure that it lays flat. Gently kind of just press it onto a table or a surface. You can kind of keep shaping it as you're doing this too. You want to be very careful as you squish it down because you don't want to smash it because then you'll undo all the hard work that you've done. But just kind of gently pushing it until you get a nice flat edge on the back. And then, of course, the hard part, waiting for it to dry. So we'll set this aside, and it might take, especially if it's a little bit bigger, a little bit fatter, it might take a little extra time to dry. Sometimes up to a day, but at least a couple of hours will be good. And you could glue this on even while it's still pretty soft. You just have to be really careful that you aren't gonna push it, and it's easier to paint and color too once it's all the way dried. But what we'll do, even now while it is still wet, I'm going to put it on my paper here, and I'm going to think about where my toucan is going to sit on my page. Am I going to put him right in the very center when I glue him down? Like my duck here, I kind of put him off to the bottom a little bit, which hits on the rule of thirds. So having things kind of down a little bit in one of the corners or up in one of the corners is kind of sometimes more interesting than having it just centered. So if you want to center it, you can, but maybe think about how it might look in some different parts of your page. So I'm going to put him or her. I don't know if it's a girl or boy toucan yet. I don't know. I kind of like centered. I don't know. We'll do it. Here is where I'm going to put them. Kind of up a little bit. So then with my pencil, I'm going to trace around just really lightly. Remember, if we did the drawing day, you learned about drawing light. So just very lightly draw around him there. So then I'll set this aside to dry. So this paper I have here, I'm coloring my background with watercolor. But you can color your background with any media that you want. You could use oil pastels or markers or crayons or a mixture of all of them. You could collage a background. Whatever way you want to make your background, you can. But I'm going to use watercolor today. So I have here watercolor paper. It's got a little bit of texture to it. The texture on the front and the back is a little bit different. There's a lot of different kinds of watercolor paper you can get. If you want to do watercolors, but you don't have watercolor paper, at least using a paper that's a little bit thicker will work better than trying to use regular copy paper. But of course, you can still use regular copy paper. If you happen to watch our watercolor day that we did, where we painted the sky, I kind of showed you what watercolor looks like when you do use it on copy paper compared to a thicker paper. The paper I used in that one wasn't watercolor paper, but this one is. So you can reference that if needed. But I have watercolor paper here today because that's what I'm using. And I think my toucan lives in the jungle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint a jungle scene here. I have my fluffy watercolor brush here. And of course, I like to start out with a nice big brush. And when I do watercolors also, I like to start out by laying down just water all over it first. And so I'll keep dipping in. I want a good amount of water on here. That just helps kind of prep your page, and it helps your watercolor flow a lot more, especially if you're going to be blending colors. This is a really good thing to do. If you're going to be painting a lot of detail, you might not want to start out like this, but I like to because I like letting things flow. There we go. So you see my paper's kind of curling, so I'll just kind of push it down. And if this is happening too, what you can do is put a little bit of water on the back too, kind of in an X across here. And I'll put a little on these edges also. And that'll just help it to lay just a little bit flatter, as you can see. So it's not so bad. Got a little paint on it there. So let's see, for my jungle scene, I know that he might be sitting on a branch. So I'm going to start out with getting some sort of a little branch in here. There we go. And it's a jungle, so there's lots of branches. I'm just going to kind of randomly. Trees and leaves are really fun to paint because they're just so random. You ever notice that? How random trees are? Like they don't grow in straight lines. They're just kind of like boop, boop, boop. So I'll start out getting some nice little twigs here. All sorts of little things. Sound like Bob Ross. Okay. So now I have my outline on here, and I'm not really going to worry too much about my outline. I'm going to kind of think about how my background is going to interact with this outline, but I'm going to go ahead and paint over it because you won't really notice those outlines too much, and you can go back and erase them later if you want to. On this one, I just left the outline on there, and you might not have even noticed. And if you did, then you can just go back and erase them on yours if you want to. So, got some tree branches going here. Okay, now I'm going to start doing some leaves. And since these are jungle leaves, I'm going to do some kind of like fan type of leaves. So I'm going to get my green because I'm going to give them a more naturalistic setting. But if you wanted to do a crazy setting with some crazy colored leaves, you totally could do that. So I'm going to pick a branch, and I'm just going to kind of flick my brush out and kind of get some tropical looking leaves going. And again, you can paint whatever kind of a background you want. If you have a city bird, you can put your city bird in the city. Maybe, you know, this one, I have him like maybe on a little pond or at the ocean. Maybe if you do a seagull, you can put your seagull at the ocean. Maybe your bird lives up in the mountains, so you're going to paint some mountains. I don't know, where does your bird live? And so while this is still wet, I can add a little more colors to these too. So maybe I'll add a little bit of yellow in here. Kind of add a little more variety and get a little more color. Jungles are really colorful. Kind of get some layers going in there. And two, what you can do is if you don't want to use the color straight out of here, I'll show you a little trick. So most watercolor palettes have this lid over here with these different sections. Did you know that those sections were so that you could mix colors? Yeah, pretty neat. So I'm going to mix kind of a yellow-green to use. So I got some green, and I just kind of plop it down over here in one of these sections. I'll rinse my brush out so I don't get my yellow dirty. dirtier than it is. It's got a little green in there already. So I'll dip into my yellow. And I'll mix it in here. I want a little more yellow. And you can mix up custom colors in these little sections over here. You can also do this, maybe if you have an actual paint palette, you can use that to mix colors too. But that's what this section in here is for. If yours is dirty, like this one here is dirty, all I need to do is get it wet because watercolors will come up. And you see that came right off. And then I would just wipe this out with a napkin and put my new color in there. So it's really easy to clean up. So just get it wet and then you can just wipe it right out with a napkin. And now I could use that section for another color if I need to. So I'm going to just use this yellow green that I made, and I'm going to do some kind of like bigger leaves here. Just kind of fill in the space back here a little bit because I want to fill this whole background with really fun leaves and plants of all different kinds. So you can see I'm almost just even scribbling these in and they're kind of looking leafy. So that's really what I love about painting plants and leaves and things, is that they can just be random and that is okay. So let's see, I'm going to do a little bit of a blue-green. So I'm going to get some water over here, add some blue, add some green. Make sure I get a lot of green. And that's still pretty blue, so let's add a little more green. There we go. That's a nice blue color, so we'll get some cooler colored leaves in here. Let's see. Kind of sticking up like that. Just kind of trying to fill in the background as well here. That kind of overlaps there a little bit. There we go. And you know what? I think in the jungle there are some pretty crazy colors, so I'm going to put some like red and orange leaves in there. Some really bright, pretty plants. I could make them like flowers maybe, but I think I want them to be kind of like actual leaves. So it would probably be a good idea to let these ones dry so I don't mix my red and my green together, because did you know that red and green are opposite colors? So if you try to mix these together, what do you think happens? It will make brown. And I'll show that to you while we're waiting for this to dry. So I have some red, just real quick. If I mix it with green, and again, these are complementary colors. They're opposite on the color wheel. So if you've ever seen a color wheel, these ones are right across from each other. So that means they're opposites. Purple and yellow are also complements, and so are blue and orange. So it kind of goes boop, boop, boop. Those ones are your opposite colors. So if I mix these together, see that? It made this kind of brown gray sort of color. So I don't want this color on my colorful painting, so I'm going to wait for this to dry. Okay, so now this is dry. So I can come in with my red and orange, maybe even yellow. Yeah, I'm going to start with yellow actually on the outside edges of these bright fun leaves. Let's see, kind of like this. Maybe one here, here, there. I'm just going to put some random yellow in these other spaces. all filled in here. I don't have any white paper showing. Okay. So there's kind of some yellow. I'm gonna pop some orange in there. Oh yeah, that's looking pretty cool. There. I think that feels pretty tropical. So then, since these ones are dry, if I wanted to go back in, maybe with a smaller brush like this one, and add some more details to them, I could maybe add some like stems and all sorts of different things. You can make this as detailed or as simple as you want to. So I think that's pretty good for my background. If I wanted to go and add flowers to it, I could, but I think this will do for now. You can always go back and add a few more details to it too once you have your bird on there, so you can kind of see how they look together. I'm going to glue this down. You can use a glue stick. I used a glue stick on this one, but I think I'm going to try the liquid glue for this one. I have a clear one here. The white one works too, though. Any of them will be fine. So I have it flipped over to my flat side, and I'm being careful that I don't push down. If it's already all the way dry, then that'll be fine. Mine's still wet. I'm just going to give it a try. There, I got some glue on it, and I'll try to line it up with the outlines that I put. There we go. Gently press it on there. And then once you have your bird on there, this works best if it's dry, but you can paint it. So I know that toucans have kind of black bodies, but they have white details too, so I don't want to paint too much black here. Some kind of little wing tips. See right there? Maybe their tummies white? Okay, it's like around her chin. So paint their toucan. So see, they kind of got this shape here. And I know that they have really colorful beaks. So there's kind of base color for toucan. And you can make your bird whatever color you want to. You don't have to make it the colors it's supposed to be, because it's your bird. So orange, yellow. Oh yeah, that was what you orange in here. There we go. And then I'm just going to leave this spot white here. I think we need a little more orange on the beak though. So mine's still wet, so you can definitely paint it when it's wet, but I know from experience that it works way better when it's dry. So make sure you wait till it's dry before you paint it and glue it on here. But then the last step, once you have it almost all the way done, if you want to paint the eye on there, you can, but you can also use markers like this permanent marker here to draw the little eye on. And then you could also add more details. Like on this one, I drew the line for the beak, but I had to do that when it was dry. And this one's still wet. So that's how you can make your 3D relief bird. So it kind of pops off on the page, which is called a 3D relief. And you can paint a pretty background. So remember, today we talked about why does art matter? So as you're making this project, you can think about why does art matter to you? I hope you have fun creating today.